Get him out. He can't pay. The order cracked across the emergency room like a slap. For half a second, even the monitors seemed to fall quiet. Patients turned their heads. A young mother pulled her child closer. Behind the registration desk, a clerk stopped typing with her fingers still resting on the keys. Maya William did not move away from the old man on the floor. "Did you hear me, Nurse William?" Dr. Victor Hale barked from behind her. He was the head of emergency medicine at Riverside General, a man with a sharp jaw, a white coat, and a talent for making every nurse under him feel small. "Step back. You are not authorized to touch that patient." Maya kept 2 fingers pressed against the old man's neck. His pulse fluttered weakly beneath her touch, uneven and frightening. His lips were turning blue. Rainwater dripped from his torn brown coat onto the polished lobby floor. He looked like a man who had spent the night under a bridge, and maybe many nights before that. "He's in cardiac distress," Maya said. "He needs oxygen now." Dr. Hale gave a short, cruel laugh. Listen to her. 8 years of school, and suddenly she thinks she runs the ER. A few nurses looked down. Tanya Brooks, standing near the supply cart, tightened her grip on a clipboard but said nothing. Maya was 30 years old, a black nurse on the night shift at Riverside General Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. She had heard people like Dr. Hale before, people who used polished words in public and ugly ones when they thought no one important was listening. He had called her too emotional when she comforted grieving families, too aggressive when she questioned delayed care, and lucky to have this position whenever she worked twice as hard as everyone else. But tonight, his voice had a sharper edge. "Get up," Hale snapped. "You're making a scene. The scene is a man dying in our lobby," Maya said. Malcolm Reed, the hospital director, stepped forward in his charcoal suit. His silver hair was perfect, his expression cold. He looked less concerned about the old man's breathing than the muddy water spreading across his expensive floor. "Does he have insurance?" Reed asked. A registration clerk swallowed. "We haven't found any ID, sir." "Then he goes to county?" Maya looked up. "He may not survive the ride." Dr. Hale pointed at her. "There it is again. Drama. Always drama with you." Maya felt the words land, but she did not let them move her. Her mother, Denise William, had raised her in a small brick house on the south side of Atlanta, where manners mattered, church mattered, and no one was allowed to look away from suffering just because suffering wore dirty clothes. That morning, Denise had warned her over coffee, "Don't let hard people make your heart hard." Now Maya heard those words in her chest. The old man's eyes opened for a moment, pale blue, clouded with pain but strangely focused. His hand found Maya's wrist and held on with the last strength he had. "Sir," Maya said softly, "my name is Maya. I'm going to help you." "You will do no such thing," Hale said. "You touch that emergency kit, and I'll write you up for insubordination before this man is even off the floor. He needs aspirin, oxygen, and a cardiac workup. He needs a shelter," Hale snapped. "Not my trauma bay." The words were so ugly that even Reed glanced at him. Not in disagreement, but because Hale had said the quiet part too loudly. Tanya stepped closer. "Doctor, his color is bad." Hale turned on her. "Did I ask you, Nurse Brooks?" Tanya's mouth closed. Maya reached toward the emergency kit mounted on the wall. Hale moved fast, stepping between her and the kit. "Are you deaf, William? Or just too stubborn to understand basic instructions?" A murmur went through the waiting room. An older man in a falcon's cap lowered his magazine. A woman near the vending machine whispered, "Lord have mercy." Maya stood slowly, keeping one hand near the old man's shoulder. She was not tall, but she looked Dr. Hale directly in the eye. "Move." His eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me?" "Move, doctor." Reed's voice dropped low. "Nurse William, you are on thin ground." "I know exactly where I'm standing," Maya said. Beside a dying man. For a moment, the room held its breath. Maya knew what this could cost her. She needed this job. Her mother's prescriptions were expensive. The mortgage had not disappeared just because Denise's knees were getting worse. Maya's old Toyota made a grinding sound every cold morning, and her savings account was so small it felt more like a prayer than a plan. But the old man's pulse stumbled again. A life did not become less urgent because saving it was inconvenient. Dr. Hale leaned closer, his voice low enough to sound personal and cruel. People like you always think compassion is a qualification. It isn't. Discipline is. Obedience is. Knowing your place is. Maya's throat tightened, but her voice stayed calm. My place is with my patient. Then she stepped around him. Hale grabbed her forearm. The lobby went still. Maya looked down at his hand, then back at his face. Take your hand off me. Something in her tone made him release her. She opened the emergency kit, pulled on gloves, and took out the oxygen mask. Tanya, bring the tank. Reed snapped. Do not assist her. Tanya froze for one painful second. Then she rolled the oxygen tank forward. Yes, Maya. Hale's face flushed. Both of you are finished. No, Tanya said quietly. We're witnesses. Maya placed the mask over the old man's face and adjusted the flow. His chest rose shallowly, then again, a little stronger. Security arrived at the edge of the lobby. 2 men in Navy uniforms who looked uncomfortable before they even spoke. Reed pointed at the old man. Remove him. One guard hesitated. Sir, he looks real bad. That is not your medical opinion to make, Reed said. It's hers, Tanya replied. Maya checked the old man's pulse again. I need a wheelchair or a stretcher now. Hale stepped in front of her again. You will not bring him into my ER. Maya looked at the old man's broken shoes, then at Reed's polished leather ones, and something inside her settled completely. Then fire me after he's alive. A sound moved through the room. Not applause, not yet, but the sound of people remembering their own courage. Tanya brought the wheelchair. Together, she and Maya lifted the old man carefully. He groaned, but the oxygen was helping. His fingers brushed Maya's sleeve, as if he were trying to thank her but had no strength left to speak. As they pushed him toward the treatment hallway, Dr. Hale followed, furious. You arrogant little fool. You think this makes you noble? Maya did not stop. Reed's voice came behind them, cold and final. This is not over. Maya kept both hands on the wheelchair. No, she said softly. It isn't. And beneath the oxygen mask, the old man's eyes opened again. For one brief second, he looked not helpless, not lost, but aware, as if he understood every word, as if he were remembering every face in that room. The wheelchair rattled over the threshold between the lobby and the treatment hallway, and Maya felt the shift immediately. Behind her was the public world, full of watching eyes and whispered judgment. Ahead of her was the narrow, fluorescent-lit corridor where decisions turned into consequences. The old man's head rested against the side of the chair, his oxygen mask fogging faintly with each shallow breath. His right hand still clutched the front of his torn coat, fingers curled as if holding on to something more than pain. Room 4, Maya said. Tanya pushed faster. Room 4 is supposed to be held for ensured cardiac intake. Maya glanced at her. Tanya gave a humorless smile. I didn't say I agreed with it. I said what it's supposed to be. Then tonight, it's being used for a man whose heart is trying to quit. They turned into the room. It was small, half-stocked, and colder than it should have been. A folded blanket lay at the foot of the bed. Someone had left an empty styrofoam coffee cup on the counter beside a stack of unused consent forms. Maya ignored all of it. She and Tanya lifted the old man from the wheelchair with the careful urgency that came only from years of moving fragile bodies without making their suffering worse. The old man groaned as his back touched the bed. I know, Maya said softly. I know it hurts. Stay with me. Tanya adjusted the oxygen while Maya reached for the blood pressure cuff. The numbers came up ugly, too low, pulse irregular, skin cold and damp. His chest rose in short, uneven pulls. Each breath a negotiation his body was beginning to lose. We need Dr. Harris, Tanya said. We need anyone willing to treat him, Maya replied. As if summoned by the sentence, Dr. Victor Hale stormed into the doorway. Malcolm Reed stood behind him, not entering, just watching from the hall as if the room itself might contaminate his suit. Hale's face was red now. Anger had stripped away the polished cruelty and left only the raw kind beneath it. You had no authority to move him. Maya placed cardiac leads on the old man's chest. He had no time to wait for permission. You think that sounds heroic? Hale snapped. It sounds reckless. It sounds like a nurse who can't follow chain of command. Maya looked at the monitor. The rhythm was wrong. Not gone. Not yet. But dangerous. Possible myocardial infarction. We need aspirin, nitro if pressure allows, labs, EKG, and physician evaluation. You don't give orders in my ER. Then give the right one. The room went still, except for the monitor's uneven beeping. Tanya's eyes widened slightly, but she kept working. Hale stepped closer. You watch your tone. Maya did not raise her voice. Doctor, his pressure is dropping. Reed spoke from the doorway. This patient is not admitted. Maya turned just enough to see him. He is in a treatment room, on oxygen, with cardiac symptoms. You can call him whatever you want, but medically, he is our responsibility. That is not your determination to make, Reed said. No, Maya replied. It's the laws. For the first time that night, something flickered in Reed's expression. Not fear. Not yet. Irritation that she had said something inconvenient in front of witnesses. The old man's hand jerked toward his coat pocket again. Maya noticed. Sir? Are you trying to tell me something? His eyes opened halfway. Beneath the pain, there was that same strange clarity. His fingers clawed weakly at the inside of his coat, but he could not reach whatever he wanted. Hale scoffed. He's altered. Probably drunk, high, or both. Maya's head turned toward him slowly. Do you smell alcohol? That's not the point. Then don't diagnose him with your prejudice. Tanya inhaled sharply. Reed's mouth tightened. Hale took one step toward Maya, lowering his voice into something more personal. You have been a problem since the day you arrived. Always questioning. Always performing compassion for an audience. Let me explain something to you, William. This hospital runs because people like me make decisions people like you don't understand. Maya pulled a blanket over the old man's legs. I understand a dying man when I see one. You understand nothing about liability. I understand abandonment. That word landed hard. Reed entered the room then, moving with controlled fury. Enough. Nurse Brooks, leave the room. Tanya hesitated. Now, Reed said. Tanya looked at Maya. Maya gave the smallest shake of her head, not asking Tanya to disobey, not openly, just telling her she understood. Tanya stepped back toward the hallway, but she did not go far. Reed turned to Maya. You are going to disconnect him from hospital equipment. Security will arrange transport to Grady or county intake. He may not survive transport without stabilization. That is not our problem. Maya stared at him. You're saying that out loud? I am saying this facility has protocols. No, Maya said quietly. You're saying his life is worth less because his shoes are broken. For a moment, Reed looked at the old man's shoes at the foot of the bed. Split leather, wet socks, a piece of string where a lace should have been. His face gave nothing away. Hale reached toward the oxygen valve. We are done here. Maya moved before she thought. She caught his wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firmly enough to stop him. Do not touch that oxygen. Hale stared at her hand on his wrist as though she had committed a crime against nature. You just made the worst mistake of your career. Maya released him. Maybe, but he's still breathing. The monitor suddenly chirped faster. The old man's body stiffened. His left hand clenched. His mouth opened beneath the oxygen mask, trying to pull in air that would not come smoothly. Maya saw the change in rhythm and felt the room narrow down to what mattered. He's crashing, she said. Hale did not move. For one terrible second, neither did Reed. Maya shoved past them and hit the call button. Tanya! Tanya was already there. The next minutes lost their edges. Maya became hands, eyes, voice, training. She elevated the bed, checked airway, reassessed pulse, got aspirin crushed and ready, called for EKG, called again for Dr. Harris, then for any available physician. Tanya worked beside her without being asked twice, moving around Hale as if he were furniture blocking a hallway. Pressure? Maya asked. Still low, Tanya said. Pulse? Threading. The old man's eyes opened again. His gaze found Maya's face. He looked terrified now, but not of death exactly. It was something else, something unfinished. You're not alone, Maya told him. You hear me? Not in this room. His fingers brushed hers. Then they slid weakly back toward his coat. This time, Maya reached into the inner pocket and felt paper. Not money. Not ID. A folded envelope, damp at one corner but sealed. On the front, written in shaky blue ink, were 2 words, Ryan only. She did not have time to think about it. The door burst open, and Dr. Elaine Harris stepped in, still pulling on gloves. She was in her 60s, small, gray-haired, and respected by nurses because she listened before she spoke. Her eyes moved over the monitor. The old man, Maya, Hale, Reed, and the oxygen set up in less than 5 seconds. What happened? Harris asked. Maya answered before anyone else could. Male approximately 75. Collapsed in lobby, severe chest pain, cyanosis, unstable pulse, low BP, probable cardiac event. Director Reed ordered removal. Doctor. Hale attempted to discontinue oxygen. Patient is deteriorating. Hale exploded. That is a distorted account. Dr. Harris looked at him once. Is the oxygen medically indicated? Hale's jaw flexed. Yes or no, Victor? He said nothing. That's what I thought. Harris moved to the bedside. Maya, stay with me. Tanya, EKG now. And somebody get this man registered as John Doe if that's what it takes. Reed's voice hardened. Dr. Harris, administrative approval has not been granted. Harris did not look away from the patient. Then administratively approve the fact that he's not dying in my ER while I'm standing here. It was the first time all night someone with enough seniority had said what Maya had been saying from the start. For a brief moment, Maya felt the room shift. Not safe, not solved, but shifted. The EKG printed in a restless strip of paper. Harris read it, and her face tightened. We're treating. Now. Reed stepped back, realizing he had temporarily lost control of the medical side of the room. But Maya could feel his eyes on her. Cold, calculating, waiting. They stabilized the old man enough to keep him from slipping away. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. Medication, monitoring, oxygen, calls, documentation. The kind of fight that did not look dramatic to people outside medicine but felt like holding a door shut against death with your shoulder. Finally, the old man's breathing steadied. His color improved by degrees. The pulse under Maya's fingers grew stronger. Dr. Harris exhaled. He's not out of danger, but he's here. Tanya closed her eyes for half a second. Thank God. Maya looked down at the old man. His face, cleaned slightly by oxygen tubing and hospital light, seemed different now. Still poor looking, still frail, but there was something in the set of his jaw that did not belong to a man easily dismissed. Dr. Harris touched Maya's shoulder. Good work. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made Maya aware of the silence behind her. She turned. Malcolm Reed stood in the doorway, with 2 security guards beside him. Dr. Hale was at his shoulder, expression sharp with satisfaction. Reed held Maya's employee badge in his hand. She had not even felt him remove it from where it hung near the bed rail. Nurse William, he said, loud enough for the hall to hear. You are suspended pending termination. Tanya stepped forward. You cannot be serious. Reed ignored her. You violated direct orders, misused hospital resources, interfered with administrative protocol, and created liability for this institution. Maya looked from his face to the old man in the bed. Alive, breathing. That man would be dead, she said. Reed's eyes hardened. And you are unemployed. He turned to the guards. Escort her out. If Maya's courage touched your heart, please give this video a like, because sometimes one brave person is all it takes to stand between cruelty and a human life. And before we continue, comment below where you're watching from, your city, your state, or your country, because you never know. Someone near you may be watching this same story right now, feeling exactly what you're feeling. Maya stood very still. Somewhere behind her, the monitor continued its steady beep. Proof of life, proof of what her disobedience had done. As security approached, the old man's eyes opened again. This time, he was awake enough to understand. The old man's eyes opened just as the first security guard reached Maya's side. At first, no one noticed. Malcolm Reed was too busy standing in the doorway with Maya's badge in his hand, wearing the satisfied expression of a man who believed the room had finally returned to its proper order. Dr. Victor Hale stood beside him, arms folded, his mouth twisted into something that was almost a smile. Tanya Brooks looked ready to fight someone. And, Doctor, Elaine Harris stood at the foot of the bed, with the kind of stillness that came from decades of learning when silence was not agreement, but evidence. Maya noticed the old man because her attention had never really left him. His fingers moved against the sheet, weakly at first, then with purpose. "Mr. Doe?" Maya said softly, ignoring the guard beside her. "Sir, can you hear me?" His gaze found hers. The oxygen mask covered half his face, but his eyes were clear enough now to carry meaning. He looked from Maya to Reed, then to Dr. Hale, then back to Maya. Something changed in his expression. Pain was still there, but behind it sat understanding. Reed snapped, "Do not engage the patient. You are no longer assigned to this room." Dr. Harris turned her head. "Malcolm, he is conscious. That does not change her employment status." The old man's lips moved beneath the mask. Maya leaned closer. "Don't try to talk yet. Save your strength." He lifted his hand 2 inches off the bed, then let it fall. His fingers pointed toward Maya's scrub pocket. Maya frowned. "My pocket?" He gave the smallest nod. Reed's voice sharpened. "Nurse William, step away now." The security guard, a broad man with kind eyes and an uncomfortable face, murmured, "Ma'am, please don't make this harder." Maya looked at him. "He's asking for something. He can ask another nurse," Reed said. The old man shook his head. It was barely emotion, but everyone saw it. The monitor beeped steadily beside him, a stubborn little sound that seemed to argue with every cruel thing said in the room. Tanya stepped closer. "Maybe let the man speak." Hale scoffed. "He's disoriented." Dr. Harris's eyes never left the patient. "He looks oriented to me." The old man pointed again, this time more urgently, toward Maya's pocket. Maya reached in and pulled out her phone. His eyes held on it. "You want to make a call?" she asked. His nod was immediate. Reed let out a short laugh. "Absolutely not. This is not a public phone booth." The old man turned his head slowly toward Reed. For the first time, Maya saw something pass over Malcolm Reed's face that looked almost like discomfort. Not recognition, but the beginning of uncertainty. The old man's stare was not the stare of a frightened drifter. It was the stare of a man who had once given orders and expected them to be carried out. Dr. Harris said, "If it calms the patient, let him make the call." Reed glared at her. "Doctor, I am still director of this facility, and I am still the physician responsible for keeping him stable," Harris replied. "His stress level matters." Maya unlocked her phone and held it near the old man's hand. "Do you remember the number?" He nodded. His fingers trembled badly. Maya helped guide them, but he tapped the numbers himself. Slowly, carefully, 10 digits. No hesitation. When the call connected, Maya held the phone near his ear. The room seemed to shrink around that small sound of ringing. Once, twice. On the third ring, a man answered. His voice came through low and alert, the kind of voice that sounded awake even if it had been sleeping seconds before. "Bennett." The old man closed his eyes. Then he spoke, his voice rough, broken, but unmistakably controlled. "Ryan." There was silence on the other end. Then the man's voice changed. "Dad?" Maya felt the air shift. The old man swallowed. "I'm at Riverside General. What happened?" "Heart trouble. I'm alive because of a nurse." The voice on the other end became colder. "Where are you exactly?" "Emergency department." His eyes moved to Reed. "They tried to throw me out." No one moved. Reed's face went still. The old man drew a shallow breath and forced the next words out. "They fired her for saving me." A pause followed. It was not long, maybe 2 seconds, but it landed in the room like a door locking. Then Ryan Bennett said, "Who fired her?" The old man looked directly at Malcolm Reed. "The director." "What's his name?" Maya hesitated, but the old man did not. He had heard it spoken enough. "Malcolm Reed." The voice on the phone lost all softness. "Stay where you are. Do not let anyone move you. I'm coming." The line ended. For a moment, no one spoke. The old man's hand fell back against the sheet. He looked exhausted, but not afraid. Maya gently took the phone back and slipped it into her pocket. Reed recovered first. That was highly inappropriate. Dr. Harris gave him a look. A sick man called his son. Hale's mouth tightened. Assuming that was his son, Tanya turned to him. You really can't help yourself, can you? Careful, Hale snapped. No, Tanya said. I've been careful for 15 years. Look where careful got us. Maya glanced at her, surprised by the quiet fire in her voice. Reed lifted Maya's badge slightly. This spectacle changes nothing. Nurse William is still terminated. Suspended pending termination, Dr. Harris said. Reed looked at her. You said it yourself, Harris continued. Words matter, Malcolm. Maya should have felt fear then. She knew that. The kind of fear that came when rent, groceries, prescriptions, and your mother's worried face all rose up at once. But something about the old man's call had steadied her. She still did not know who he was. She did not know who Ryan Bennett was. But she knew she had not imagined the authority in that voice. The security guard cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, do you still want us to escort her out? Reed did not answer immediately. That hesitation was small, but Maya saw it. Dr. Hale saw it too, and leaned toward him. Malcolm, if you back down now, every nurse in this place will think policy is optional. Reed's face hardened again. Escort her out. Tanya stepped between Maya and the guard. She should be allowed to give a statement. She can give it to unemployment, Hale said. Maya touched Tanya's arm. It's okay. No, it is not okay. I know, Maya said softly. But he's alive. Tanya's eyes filled, though she blinked the tears away fast. Nurses on night shift learned how to keep working with grief, sitting in their throats. Maya turned to Dr. Harris. His pressure needs watching. He responded to oxygen, but he's fragile. The envelope in his coat is marked Ryan only. He kept reaching for it. Dr. Harris nodded once. I'll protect it. Reed's eyes snapped toward the coat hanging over the chair. What envelope? Dr. Harris moved casually, but with purpose, placing herself between Reed and the chair. Patient property, not administrative business. The old man's eyes flicked to Dr. Harris, and for the first time, a faint trace of approval crossed his face. Security walked Maya down the hallway. No one touched her, and somehow that made the humiliation worse. It was the polite version of being thrown out, the version institutions preferred when they wanted cruelty to look orderly. Staff watched from doorways and behind computers. Some looked ashamed, some looked afraid. A few looked at Maya with open respect, but none of them spoke loudly enough for Reed to hear. At the nurse's station, Tanya called after her. Maya. Maya turned. Tanya lifted her chin. You did right. Those 3 words almost broke her. Maya nodded and kept walking. The lobby looked different now. The rain had slowed outside, leaving the glass doors streaked and shining. The waiting room patients watched her pass. The older man in the Falcon's cap stood halfway, as though he wanted to say something but did not know if he was allowed. Maya reached the entrance with the 2 guards beside her. One of them opened the door and said quietly, For what it's worth, ma'am, my grandmother would have wanted you in that room. Maya looked at him. Thank you. Then she stepped outside. The cold night air hit her face. The hospital lights glowed behind her, bright and clean and indifferent. She stood under the overhang in her thin scrubs, her badge gone, her job gone, her hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic and rain. For the first time, the fear came. It came not as panic, but as a slow heaviness behind her ribs. She thought of her mother at the kitchen table, the mortgage notice tucked beneath a fruit bowl, the orange prescription bottles lined up beside the sink, the old Toyota in the employee lot, the savings account that would not survive one serious emergency. She pressed her hand against the small silver cross pinned inside her scrub top. Mama, she whispered, though her mother was miles away. I hope you were right. Behind the glass, she could see Malcolm Reed speaking sharply to Dr. Hale. She could see Tanya standing with her arms crossed, refusing to look away. She could see the room where the old man lay alive because she had disobeyed. And then she heard it, faint at first. A distant siren, then another. Maya lifted her head. Down the wet Atlanta street, red and blue lights began to reflect against the pavement, growing brighter as they approached. Not one vehicle, several. Moving fast, coordinated, purposeful. Inside the lobby, people started turning toward the windows. Maya stood frozen beneath the hospital awning as the first black SWAT vehicle swung into the entrance drive, followed by another, then another. Tires hissed over rainwater. Doors opened before the engines fully stopped. Men in tactical gear stepped out with the calm urgency of people who had not come to ask permission. At the center of them was a tall man in a dark jacket marked Commander. He looked toward the hospital first. Then his eyes found Maya. He crossed the drop-off lane, rain shining on his shoulders, and stopped in front of her. "Are you Maya William?" he asked. Maya swallowed. "Yes." His jaw tightened, and behind the command in his eyes, she saw something deeply personal. "I'm Commander Ryan Bennett," he said. "You saved my father." For a moment, Maya forgot the cold. The man standing in front of her looked nothing like the boyish voice people imagined when they heard the word son. Commander Ryan Bennett was in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, with rain darkening the collar of his tactical jacket, and a face that carried discipline the way old churches carried stained glass, quietly, permanently. Behind him, SWAT officers moved across the hospital entrance in controlled lines. No one shouted. No one wasted motion. That made them more frightening, not less. "You saved my father," he said again, as if he needed the words to be real before he could move past them. Maya's throat tightened. "I did what any nurse should have done." Ryan looked through the glass doors toward the bright lobby. Apparently not any nurse. She had no answer for that. One of the SWAT officers approached. A woman with a helmet tucked under one arm and a radio clipped to her vest. "Commander, front entrance is covered. 2 units moving to the ambulance bay. Local PD has perimeter on the south lot." Ryan nodded without looking away from Maya. "No one leaves without being identified." "Yes, sir." Maya glanced toward the doors. "Your father is in room 4. Dr. Harris is with him. He was stable when they made me leave, but he needs monitoring." Ryan's expression shifted at the word made. "They escorted you out?" "They fired me first." The rain tapped softly on the overhang. Ryan's jaw moved once, controlled but hard. "Who put hands on you?" "No one." "They didn't have to." He understood that. Maya could see it in his eyes. Some humiliations did not require force. Some were designed to be clean. He stepped toward the entrance. "Come with me." Maya hesitated. "I don't work here anymore." Ryan turned back. "Tonight, you are the only person I trust in that building." The words landed with more weight than he could have known. Maya pulled in a breath and followed him through the automatic doors. The lobby had changed completely in the few minutes since she had been pushed out. Patients sat frozen in their chairs. The registration clerks stared wide-eyed as SWAT officers took positions near the exits. A little boy clung to his grandmother's sleeve. The older man in the Falcon's cap stood slowly, watching Maya walk back in beside the commander, and gave her a small nod like a man at Sunday service, acknowledging truth when it entered the room. Malcolm Reed stood near the nurse's station with Dr. Victor Hale at his shoulder. Both men looked offended, but in different ways. Hale looked angry, like a man whose authority had been interrupted. Reed looked calculating, already measuring how to turn the situation into something manageable. "Commander Bennett," Reed said, forcing a professional tone. "This response is unnecessary. Your father is receiving care." Ryan stopped 10 feet from him. "My father received care because you were disobeyed." Reed's mouth tightened. "There seems to be a misunderstanding." There usually is when someone has to explain why an old man with chest pain was ordered out of an emergency room. Dr. Hale stepped forward. "With respect, Commander, you are entering a medical facility during an active shift with armed personnel. This is disruptive and potentially dangerous." Ryan looked at him. "And you are?" "Dr. Victor Hale, head of emergency medicine." Ryan's eyes moved over him once, not impressed. "You're the physician who tried to stop oxygen?" Hale's face flushed. "That is an outrageous characterization." Maya spoke before she meant to. "It's accurate." Every head turned toward her. Hale glared. "You no longer have standing to make clinical statements in this hospital." Ryan turned his head slightly. "She has standing with me." The room went quiet again. Reed lifted both hands slightly, palms out, the gesture of a man trying to look reasonable in front of witnesses. "Commander, your concern is understandable, but this hospital has procedures regarding unidentified patients, resource allocation, and security. Nurse William violated direct orders and created liability exposure." Ryan stared at him. "My father is not liability exposure." "No one said he was." "You did. You just used more expensive words." Tanya Brooks, stood behind the nurse's station, eyes bright with the fierce satisfaction of someone seeing a bully meet a language he could not control. Dr. Harris appeared at the hallway entrance. Removing her gloves, she looked at Ryan, then at the SWAT team, then at Maya. "Commander Bennett?" she asked. "Yes, I'm Dr. Elaine Harris. Your father is stable for the moment. He had a serious cardiac episode, and we need to continue treatment. He's conscious, but weak." Ryan's face softened for the first time. "Can I see him?" "Yes, but calmly. He doesn't need more stress." "I understand." Reed moved quickly. "Doctor, before you allow that, we need to confirm next of kin documentation." Ryan turned so slowly that the lobby seemed to tense with him. "You want paperwork before I see my father? It is standard policy." Dr. Harris looked at Reed. "Malcolm, don't." But Reed had committed. Pride had a way of making foolish men continue walking after the bridge was gone. Ryan reached into his jacket and removed his identification. He handed it to the SWAT officer beside him, who passed it to Reed without a word. Reed looked at it. His expression changed just slightly. "Commander Ryan Bennett, Atlanta Police Department Special Weapons and Tactics. Emergency contact on file for retired Major General Arthur Bennett." The name Arthur Bennett moved across Reed's face like a shadow. Dr. Hale noticed. "What is it?" Ryan did not answer him. He looked at Reed. "Say his name." Reed swallowed. "Arthur Bennett." Ryan's voice stayed low. "Major General Arthur Bennett, United States Army, retired. My father. The man you tried to throw back into the rain." The waiting room erupted into whispers. The young mother covered her mouth. The older man in the falcon's cap muttered, "Well, I'll be." Tanya closed her eyes for a second, as if thanking God for a very specific kind of timing. Maya stood still, stunned. She had known the old man was more than he appeared. She had seen it in his eyes, but she had not expected this. Not a general, not the father of the SWAT commander now surrounding the hospital. Reed recovered with impressive speed. "Commander, we had no way of knowing his identity." Ryan's gaze hardened. "That is the point." The sentence cut through the room cleaner than any shout could have. Ryan continued, "You should not need to know a man's rank, bank balance, or last name before deciding whether he deserves to live." No one spoke. For a moment, Maya thought of her mother in the kitchen, buttering toast, warning her about men who counted money during prayer. She almost smiled, but the feeling caught in her chest and became something closer to grief. How many people had walked into this hospital without a powerful son? How many had been treated like burdens because no one important would come looking? Ryan turned to Maya. "Will you come with me to see him?" Maya glanced at Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris nodded. "He asked for you twice after they took you out." That nearly undid her. They walked down the treatment hallway together. SWAT officers remained in the lobby, quiet and watchful. Reed and Hale followed at a distance, unwilling to leave a situation they no longer controlled. The corridor smelled of antiseptic and coffee. A monitor beeped somewhere behind a curtain. Normal hospital sounds. But the night was no longer normal. When Ryan entered room 4, his command posture fell away. Arthur Bennett lay propped against the pillows, oxygen still in place, his face pale and lined. Someone had cleaned the rain from his beard. Without the coat and wet clothes, he looked smaller, older, more fragile. But when he saw Ryan, his eyes filled with a warmth so sudden it hurt to witness. "Dad," Ryan said, crossing to the bed. Arthur lifted a trembling hand. "You came loud," Arthur murmured beneath the mask. Ryan let out a breath that was almost a laugh and almost something else. "You told me to come. I said I needed you, not the whole city. You're my father. I brought enough." Arthur's eyes shifted to Maya. She brought enough first. Maya stepped closer. "Sir, you should save your strength." Arthur studied her. "I'd be dead if you cared as much about rules as they do." Maya did not know what to say. Ryan turned toward Reed, who had stopped in the doorway. "Is her termination already filed?" Reed straightened. "It is being processed." "Stop it. That is an internal administrative matter." Ryan's expression became very still. "No. It became something else the moment your internal administration nearly killed my father," Dr. Hale said. "That is not what happened." Arthur's eyes moved to him. Weak as he was, The old man's voice carried. You called me a shelter case. Hale went pale. Arthur turned to Reed. And you told them to get me out. Reed said nothing. Ryan looked at the officer beside him. Secure hospital surveillance from the lobby, treatment hallway, and room 4 exterior. Get statements from staff and patients who witnessed the incident. No recordings disappear. The officer nodded. Yes, Commander. Reed's face sharpened. You cannot seize hospital property without proper authorization. Ryan looked at him. Then call your attorney. I'll wait. That was when Malcolm Reed finally looked afraid. Not openly, not dramatically. But Maya saw it. The first crack. The tiny fracture in the polished surface of a man who had spent years mistaking control for power. Arthur squeezed Ryan's hand and looked at Maya again. Nurse William. Yes, sir. Don't let them tell you mercy is misconduct. Her eyes burned, but she kept her voice steady. I'll try not to. Outside the room, radios murmured. Footsteps moved with purpose. The hospital that had tried to throw Arthur Bennett away was now sealed by people who had come because he mattered. But as Maya stood beside his bed, she understood the deeper truth. He had mattered before the badge, before the title, before the sirens. That was why she had saved him. And now, because she had, the whole hospital was about to answer for what it had become. The first thing Malcolm Reed tried to do was smile. It was a small, controlled smile. The kind he had used for donors, grieving families, board members, and nurses who needed to be reminded that their opinions were not decisions. It had worked for him for years, in conference rooms, in budget meetings, in quiet conversations where someone's complaint could be turned into a misunderstanding. But standing in room 4 with Commander Ryan Bennett watching him and retired Major General Arthur Bennett breathing through an oxygen mask, the smile looked strangely out of place, like a silk tie at a house fire. Commander, Reed said, I understand emotions are high. Your father's condition frightened everyone. But I think once we review this calmly, you'll see there was never any intent to deny life-saving care. Arthur Bennett's eyes stayed fixed on him. Dr. Elaine Harris made a sound under her breath that was not quite a laugh. Maya stood near the wall, hands clasped in front of her, feeling the tremor finally begin in her fingers. During the emergency, she had been steady. While Dr. Hale shouted, while Reed threatened, while security escorted her out, she had stayed inside the narrow tunnel of what needed to be done. Now that Arthur was breathing and SWAT had sealed the hospital, the tunnel was gone. The room felt wider. The consequences had more space to stand in. Ryan turned to the officer beside him. Sergeant Miles, start with the lobby footage. I want a copy secured before anyone in administration touches it. Yes, sir, the officer said, already moving. Reed's smile disappeared. Commander Bennett, hospital surveillance contains protected patient information. You cannot simply take it. I'm not taking it, Ryan said. I'm preserving it. For what purpose? Ryan looked at his father, then back at Reed. For the purpose of determining whether a hospital director ordered staff to abandon a patient in medical distress. That is an inflammatory statement. So was get him out. He can't pay. Reed's face tightened. You heard that secondhand. From the doorway, Tanya Brooks said. I heard it firsthand. Everyone turned. Tanya had come in quietly, a chart hugged to her chest like armor. She looked nervous, but not uncertain. There was a difference. Her eyes went briefly to Maya, then to Arthur, then settled on Reed. I was standing right there, Tanya said. So were half the patients in the waiting room. Dr. Hale stepped forward. Nurse Brooks, I suggest you think very carefully before making statements that may damage this institution. Tanya looked at him for a long second. Doctor, I have been thinking carefully since 1998. That is the year I started working nights because my husband got sick, and somebody had to keep insurance on the family. I have thought carefully through budget cuts, bad doctors, broken equipment, and administrators who learned the word compassion from a brochure. So yes, I am thinking carefully. A faint warmth moved through Maya's chest. Hale's jaw clenched. This is not the time for personal speeches. No, Tanya said. It's the time for the truth. Arthur's hand shifted on the blanket. Ryan leaned close. You okay? Arthur nodded faintly. Let her talk. Tanya took a breath. Mr. Reed ordered the patient removed before any proper assessment was done. Dr. Hale blocked Nurse William from the emergency kit. He insulted her repeatedly, told her to know her place, and tried to stop the oxygen. "That is a lie," Hale snapped. Maya spoke quietly. "No, it isn't." Hale turned on her. "You are unemployed." Ryan's voice cut in. "She is a witness." That one sentence changed the shape of the room. Maya felt it. Reed felt it too. His eyes moved toward the hallway, where more staff had gathered, drawn by the gravity of the moment. Nurses, clerks, a respiratory tech, one janitor holding a mop handle like he had forgotten why he was carrying it. Ryan stepped toward the doorway and addressed them without raising his voice. "Anyone who saw or heard what happened tonight will be given the opportunity to provide a statement. No one is required to speak in front of their supervisors. No one is to be threatened. If anyone feels pressured, you come to me or one of my officers directly." Reed gave a sharp laugh. "You are turning my hospital into a police station." Ryan looked back at him. "No, Mr. Reed. You did that when my father had to call me from a bed he was almost denied." Arthur closed his eyes, tired but listening. Maya saw how pale he was and stepped closer to the monitor. Habit moved her before permission did. She checked his oxygen saturation, then his pulse on the screen. Better, though still fragile. Dr. Harris watched her and said, "Maya, stay where you are." Reed's head snapped toward her. "She is not staff. She is the nurse who stabilized him," Harris said. "And until I have someone better for this particular patient, she stays," Hale said. "Elaine, you are undermining hospital leadership." Dr. Harris removed her glasses and looked at him with the exhausted patience of a woman who had spent 40 years dealing with men who mistook volume for competence. "Victor, hospital leadership nearly became a coroner's problem tonight. I'm comfortable undermining that." Someone in the hallway coughed to cover a laugh. Maya looked down quickly, but she could not stop the corner of her mouth from moving. Ryan's radio crackled. Sergeant Miles's voice came through. "Commander, surveillance office is locked. Technician says access requires director authorization." Ryan looked at Reed. "Authorize it." Reed folded his arms. "I will not allow armed intimidation to override hospital protocol." Arthur opened his eyes again. His voice came out rough, but each word was clear. "Malcolm Reed." Reed looked at him. Arthur reached up slowly and pulled the oxygen mask aside. Maya immediately leaned in. "Sir, please keep that on." "One sentence," Arthur murmured. Ryan's face tightened, but he let him speak. Arthur stared at Reed with the calm of an old soldier who had seen too many men hide cowardice behind procedure. "If you need a man's title before you find his humanity, you have no business leading a hospital." The room went silent. Maya gently returned the oxygen mask to his face. Arthur allowed it, though his eyes stayed on Reed. For the first time, Reed had no immediate reply. Dr. Hale filled the silence because men like him often did. "This is absurd. A sentimental performance does not change the facts." Nurse William broke chain of command. Tanya looked at him. And thank God she did. Ryan turned to Sergeant Miles over the radio. "Get hospital legal on the phone. If they delay, contact APD command and request a preservation order. Also, notify the city attorney that potential patient abandonment occurred involving a retired general and a city SWAT commander's immediate family member." Reed's face paled one shade. Maya saw it happen and understood. Reed was not afraid of morality. He was afraid of documentation. The hallway began to stir. 2 SWAT officers moved toward the administrative wing. A local police sergeant arrived through the lobby doors and spoke quietly with Ryan. Nurses started whispering, and not the usual weary gossip of night shift. This was different. This was the sound of people realizing that something they had endured privately might now be seen publicly. A woman in her 60s stepped forward from the waiting area, still wearing a church cardigan over her nightgown. "Commander?" Ryan turned. "Ma'am, I was sitting by the vending machine. I heard that doctor call her arrogant. I heard the director say the old man could go to county." She looked at Maya. "My husband died in this hospital 12 years ago. A nurse sat with me after. I remember what good nursing looks like. That girl was doing it." Maya's eyes burned. Ryan nodded to an officer. "Take her statement." The older woman looked at Maya again. "Baby, you keep your head up." Maya could only whisper, "Thank you, ma'am." That ma'am would have made her mother proud. Reed moved closer to Ryan, lowering his voice, trying to pull the situation back into private channels. Commander, surely you understand reputational harm. We can resolve this internally. Reinstate the nurse. Issue a clarification. Review procedures. Maya felt the words like a cold draft. Reinstate the nurse. Not Maya. Not the woman who saved his father. A piece on a board. A problem to be managed. Ryan seemed to hear it too. You don't get to quietly fix what you publicly broke, he said. Dr. Harris checked Arthur's chart and looked at Maya. He needs rest. Real rest. No more courtroom in his room. Ryan nodded. You're right. He leaned over his father. Dad, I'm going to handle this. Arthur's eyes softened. Don't handle it angry. Ryan gave a small, tired smile. You called SWAT. I called my son. That's worse. For the first time all night, Arthur's mouth curved faintly. Then his gaze shifted to Maya. Nurse William. Yes, sir. You did not ask who I was. No, sir. Why? Maya thought about the answer. She thought about the lobby floor, his broken shoes, Reed's polished voice, her mother's warning, and the thin pulse beneath her fingers. Because you were dying, she said. That was enough. Arthur closed his eyes, and a tear slipped quietly from the corner of one. He did not wipe it away. Ryan saw it. His face changed, not in front of the room, but inwardly, where sons keep the child they used to be. Then he straightened and turned toward the hallway. Mr. Reed, he said, you and Dr. Hale will remain available for questioning. Reed stiffened. Are we being detained? Not yet. The two words were quiet. They were also heavier than handcuffs. Maya followed Ryan out into the hallway, though she was not sure whether she was allowed to. No one stopped her. That alone felt strange. In the lobby, the hospital had become a place of reckoning. SWAT officers guarded exits. Local police took statements. Patients spoke in low voices to officers. Staff who had spent years looking over their shoulders now glanced toward Reed with something close to courage. Tanya came to stand beside Maya. You okay? Maya gave a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. I got fired, escorted out, brought back in by SWAT, and found out my patient is a general. I don't think okay is the word. No, Tanya said, but alive is, and so is right. Across the lobby, Sergeant Miles emerged from the administrative hallway with a hospital technician beside him. He looked at Ryan and nodded. We have the footage. Reed's posture changed. Not much, just enough. Maya saw it, and so did Ryan. The commander turned toward the surveillance office, and everyone seemed to understand at once that the night was not ending. It was opening. The cameras would show what happened. The statements would fill in what the cameras missed. And Malcolm Reed, who had spent years using policy as a wall, was about to discover that walls could become evidence. Maya looked through the glass doors at the wet Atlanta pavement flashing red and blue under the emergency lights. Somewhere far away, her mother was probably asleep in the little brick house, unaware that her daughter's life had just split into before and after. Maya touched the small cross hidden inside her scrub top and whispered, I'm still here. Then she turned back toward the hospital, where the truth was waiting to be played on a screen. The surveillance office at Riverside General was smaller than Maya expected, for a hospital that liked to present itself as polished and untouchable. The room where it kept its memory was cramped, windowless, and too warm. 3 monitors sat on a long desk beneath a shelf of old binders. A half-empty bag of vending machine pretzels lay beside a keyboard, and a paper cup of coffee had gone cold near the mouse. On the wall, dozens of camera feeds showed hallways, elevators, stairwells, entrances, and waiting areas in silent squares of blue-gray light. Maya stood just inside the doorway with Tanya at her side. Commander Ryan Bennett stood behind the technician's chair, arms crossed, face unreadable. Sergeant Miles had one hand resting near his radio. Malcolm Reed stood near the wall, trying to look inconvenienced instead of cornered. Dr. Victor Hale had followed too, though no one had invited him. The technician, a nervous man named Dennis, clicked through the system with trembling fingers. The lobby camera was working all night, he said. Main entrance, triage desk, hallway outside room 4. Audio isn't standard on most feeds, but the lobby camera has partial audio because of the security intercom. Reed's voice came quickly. Partial audio is often unreliable. Ryan did not look at him. Play it. Dennis swallowed and pressed a key. The screen shifted to the lobby from earlier that night. Maya saw herself kneeling on the wet floor beside Arthur Bennett. Seeing it from above made the scene feel both familiar and strange. The old man looked smaller on camera, swallowed by his torn coat and the shine of rainwater around him. She watched Tanya roll the oxygen tank forward. She watched Dr. Hale block the emergency kit. She watched Reed stand several feet away, clean and still. Then the audio crackled. "Get him out. He can't pay." The room went quiet. No one breathed loudly. No one shifted. Even Dr. Hale stopped fidgeting. Maya felt the words strike her differently this time. In the moment, they had been a command. On the recording, they were evidence. Ryan's face did not change, but something in his eyes hardened. Dennis looked as if he wished he could disappear into the desk. "Should I continue?" "Yes," Ryan said. The footage rolled on. They heard Dr. Hale's voice, sharp and unmistakable. "Step back. You are not authorized to touch that patient." Then, a few seconds later, clearer than anyone expected. "People like you always think compassion is a qualification. It isn't. Discipline is. Obedience is. Knowing your place is." Tanya slowly turned her head toward him. "People like you?" Hale's face drained of color. That was taken out of context. "It was a hallway camera, Victor," Dr. Harris said from the doorway. Maya had not heard her come in. The older doctor stood with her glasses in one hand, exhaustion in her face, and disappointment in every line of her posture. Hale tried again. "I meant insubordinate employees." "No," Tanya said quietly. "You meant Maya." Maya kept her eyes on the screen. She did not want to look at Hale, not because she was afraid of him, but because if she looked at him now, she might finally let herself feel everything she had been too busy to feel. The insult, the hand on her arm, the way he had tried to make her small while a man was dying at her knees. The footage continued. There was Maya opening the emergency kit. There was Tanya bringing the oxygen. There was Reed calling security. There was the old man being lifted into the wheelchair and taken down the hall. Ryan spoke without turning. "Save that file to an external drive, then duplicate it." Dennis nodded. "Yes, sir." Reed cleared his throat. "Commander, I have already acknowledged that certain language may have been unfortunate, but emotional reactions during emergency operations are not criminal matters." Ryan turned then. Slowly, "My father was in medical distress. You ordered him removed because he appeared poor. Your head of emergency medicine interfered with basic stabilization. You terminated the nurse who intervened. That is not unfortunate language. That is a pattern." Reed lifted his chin. "I will not be interrogated in my own facility without counsel." "No one is stopping you from calling counsel," Ryan said. Reed reached for his phone. Sergeant Miles stepped forward. "You may make a call, sir, but do not delete messages, access hospital systems, or communicate with staff about testimony." Reed's eyes flashed. "Are you accusing me of obstruction?" "I'm preventing it," Miles said. The words hung there, calm and devastating. Maya looked back at the monitors. On one screen, the live feed showed room 4. Arthur lay under white blankets. Ryan's officer posted outside his door. Dr. Harris's nurse checking the monitor. On another, patients in the waiting room sat in clusters, speaking quietly to officers. Some had stayed just to give statements. That moved Maya more than she expected. People who had come in sick, tired, scared, or worried had chosen to remain because they had seen something wrong and did not want it buried. Tanya leaned closer to Maya. "You holding up?" "I don't know. That's honest." Maya folded her arms, partly to keep her hands still. "I keep thinking about what happens when everyone leaves." Tanya nodded. "You mean when the lights stop flashing and payroll remembers they still know how to punish people?" "Yes." Before Tanya could answer, Ryan said, "Miss William." Maya looked up. He had stepped aside from Reed and was watching her, not unkindly. "You're worried this disappears when the night shift ends." Maya hesitated, then decided truth was simpler. "I've seen things disappear. So have I." There was no speech in his tone, no performance, just recognition. Dr. Harris entered fully now. "Commander, your father is stable enough for transfer to cardiac observation once we clear a room. He's asking for Maya again." Reed snapped. "She has no clinical role here." Dr. Harris did not even look at him. "Malcolm, I have been patient because there is a sick man in this building. Do not mistake restraint for uncertainty." That silenced him. Ryan turned to Maya. "Would you sit with him?" "Not as staff, if that complicates things." As the woman he asked for, Maya's first instinct was to say yes. Her second was fear. "Is that allowed?" Dr. Harris's face softened. "In 40 years, I've found that allowed often depends on who is brave enough to write it down afterward." Tanya smiled faintly. "That sounds like a yes." Maya nodded. "I'll sit with him." The walk back to room 4 felt longer than before. The hospital was still the same place physically, but every hallway now seemed to carry a different weight. Staff lowered their voices as Maya passed. Some nodded. One older janitor, Mr. Lewis, touched 2 fingers to the brim of his cap and said, "Evening, Miss Maya," the way older Southern men sometimes did, when respect was quiet, but clear. "Evening, Mr. Lewis," she answered. That small exchange steadied her. Arthur Bennett was awake when she entered. The oxygen mask had been replaced with a nasal cannula, and his face looked less gray than before. He was still weak, still hooked to monitors, still far from safe, but his eyes were open and waiting. Maya pulled a chair beside the bed. "You asked for me, sir?" Arthur studied her for a long moment. "You keep calling me, sir. My mother would appear through that wall and correct me if I didn't." A faint smiley touched his mouth. "Good mother. The best." He looked toward the door, where a SWAT officer stood outside. "Ryan tell you who I am?" "Yes, sir." "And did it change anything?" Maya thought about that. It changed the number of armed men in the hospital. Arthur gave a weak breath that might have been a laugh. "Fair answer. But no," Maya said. "It didn't change why I helped you." His eyes softened. "That is why I wanted you here." Maya sat quietly. The room hummed with machines and distant voices. Outside, rain continued tapping against the windows, gentler now. Arthur's hands rested on the blanket, spotted with age, veins raised beneath thin skin. They did not look like hands that had once commanded troops, signed orders, held flags, buried friends. But Maya knew hands could carry histories. The skin no longer announced. "You looked at me like a man," Arthur said. Maya turned to him. "In the lobby," he continued. "Most people looked away. Some looked at my clothes. Some looked at the water on the floor. You looked at my face." Maya swallowed. "You were scared. I was angry. You were dying." "That too." For a moment, they simply sat with the truth of it. Arthur closed his eyes. "My wife used to tell me pride was just fear, wearing a good suit." Maya thought of Malcolm Reed and nearly smiled. She sounds wise. She was. Mean at Scrabble, though. This time Maya did smile. Arthur opened his eyes again. "After she died, I started walking more. No driver, no staff, no one announcing me. Just walking. Bus stops, diners, shelters, churches. You learn a great deal about your country when nobody thinks you matter." Maya listened. He looked toward the ceiling. "Tonight, I was coming back from a veterans outreach meeting. I got turned around in the rain. Chest started burning 2 blocks away. By the time I reached your doors, I couldn't stand." His voice grew quieter. "And then I heard that man say I couldn't pay." Maya felt anger rise again, slow and hot. Arthur turned his head toward her. "Don't let anger poison you." "I'm trying not to." "Good. Anger is useful for about 10 minutes. After that, it starts giving bad advice." That sounded like something her mother would agree with. The door opened softly, and Ryan stepped in. He looked from his father to Maya. "How's he doing?" "Still giving orders," Maya said. Ryan's face eased. "Then he's improving." Arthur lifted one finger. "Don't get cute." Ryan came to the bedside, and for a brief moment, Maya saw the commander disappear. He was just a son, checking the rise and fall of his father's chest. "We secured the footage," Ryan said. Arthur closed his eyes. "Good. Statements are being taken. Reed's attorney is on the way." Arthur opened one eye. "Let him bring 2. Ryan smiled faintly, then looked at Maya. "Miss William, There's something you should know. My father wants to make a formal statement before he's moved. Maya looked at Arthur. Sir, you need rest. I need both, Arthur said. Rest and a record. Ryan's expression grew serious. He wants you present when he gives it. Maya's chest tightened. Why me? Arthur reached for her hand. His grip was weak, but deliberate. Because, child, he said, justice should begin with the person nobody listened to. Maya looked down at his hand covering hers, and for the first time that night, she had to blink hard to keep from crying. Outside the room, radios murmured and footsteps gathered. The hospital was preparing for another confrontation, this one not on a lobby floor but in words, statements, and records. Malcolm Reed had believed paperwork could protect him. Now paperwork was coming for him. Maya sat beside Arthur Bennett and held his hand as Ryan called Dr. Harris back in. The night was not over, but the truth had found its voice. Ryan called for the statement to be taken in room 4, but Dr. Harris made the rules before anyone else could turn it into a battlefield. 5 people, maximum, she said, standing at the foot of Arthur Bennett's bed with a chart tucked under one arm. The patient is not a podium. He is not a press conference. He is an elderly man recovering from a cardiac event. And if any of you forget that, I will remove you myself. Arthur gave a faint smile. She reminds me of your mother. Ryan looked at him. You always said Mom was the only officer you feared. She outranked common sense. Dr. Harris raised an eyebrow. General, save your oxygen. Yes, ma'am, Arthur said. Maya sat beside the bed, still holding one of Arthur's hands between both of hers. She did not know whether she belonged in the room, but Arthur had asked for her, and for once no one had the nerve to tell him no. Ryan stood near the wall with Sergeant Miles beside him, tablet ready. Dr. Harris stayed close to the monitor. Tanya remained just inside the doorway, invited by Arthur after he learned she had brought the oxygen tank when Reed ordered her not to. The 5th person was Malcolm Reed. He stood stiffly near the door, his attorney not yet arrived, his face pale with the effort of appearing calm. Dr. Hale had tried to enter with him, but Dr. Harris had blocked him with one sentence. You are not medically necessary, and emotionally you are a hazard. Tanya had coughed into her hand to hide a laugh. Now the room was quiet, except for the soft hiss of oxygen and the steady beep of the monitor. Ryan looked at his father. Dad, you don't have to do this now. Arthur's eyes remained clear. Yes, I do. Men like him count on people waiting until morning. Reed's mouth tightened. General Bennett, I would caution against making inflammatory accusations while under medical stress. Arthur turned his head slowly toward him. Mr. Reed, I have made decisions under artillery fire with less stress than you caused in your lobby. Reed said nothing. Sergeant Miles began recording. Statement of retired Major General Arthur Bennett, taken at Riverside General Hospital, Atlanta, Georgia. Time is 11:42 p.m. Present are Commander Ryan Bennett, Sergeant Miles, Dr. Elaine Harris, Nurse Tanya Brooks, Maya William, and Hospital Director Malcolm Reed. General Bennett, please state what happened in your own words. Arthur took a breath. Maya felt his fingers tighten faintly around hers. I entered this hospital tonight in distress, he said. His voice was weak, but each word carried. Chest pain, shortness of breath. I collapsed near the entrance. Nurse Maya William came to me. She checked my pulse. She recognized I needed care. Mr. Reed asked if I had insurance. When no proof of payment was presented, he ordered me removed. Reed shifted. That is not a complete description of the administrative context. Ryan looked at him. Do not interrupt my father. The warning was quiet. It worked. Arthur continued. Dr. Hale joined him. He insulted Nurse William. He blocked her from the emergency kit. He attempted to prevent oxygen from being administered. Nurse William and Nurse Brooks acted anyway. Because they did, I am alive. Maya looked down. She could not bear the way those words filled the room. Not because they were false, but because they were true. Arthur turned his eyes to Reed. Then, after my condition improved, Mr. Reed terminated Nurse William in front of staff and patients. He did it not because she failed in her duty, but because she fulfilled it in a way that embarrassed him. Reed's face reddened. I object to that characterization. Arthur's voice roughened. I object to dying on a lobby floor. Tanya looked away, jaw tight. Dr. Harris checked the monitor, then nodded for Arthur to continue. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something older than anger sat behind them. I have worn uniforms. I have sat in rooms where men decided who mattered and who did not. I know the danger of that thinking. It never announces itself as cruelty. It announces itself as order, efficiency, policy, the good of the institution. But at the end of it, someone weaker is always left outside the door. Maya felt those words settle deep. Reed tried a different tone now, quieter, almost sympathetic. General, no one wanted harm to come to you. Arthur looked at him with exhausted disbelief. You did not care whether harm came to me. That is not better. The monitor beeped steadily. Sergeant Miles asked, General Bennett, do you wish to file a formal complaint? Yes. Against whom? Malcolm Reed, Victor Hale, and Riverside General Hospital pending review. Reed exhaled sharply. This is a mistake. Arthur's gaze did not move. No, the mistake was yours. This is the record. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She flinched slightly, then remembered she had not called her mother. She pulled the phone out enough to see the screen. Mama. Of course. It was nearly midnight, and Denise William had the instincts of a woman who could feel trouble from across town. Maya declined the call with a silent ache. A second later, a text appeared. You okay, baby? Maya stared at the words. She wanted to answer yes, but her thumbs would not move. Arthur noticed. Your mother? Yes, sir. Answer her. Mothers outrank generals. Ryan gave a quiet snort. That's true. Maya typed. I'm safe. Long night. I'll explain soon. The reply came almost immediately. I'm praying now. Maya closed her eyes for a second. Then she slipped the phone away. Sergeant Miles ended the recording and secured the file. Statement complete. Dr. Harris stepped in. That's enough. General Bennett needs rest and cardiac observation. Arthur did not argue this time. His strength was fading. Maya could feel it in the loosening of his grip. Ryan came to the bedside. You did good, Dad. Arthur looked at him. Don't let them make this only about me. Ryan's expression softened. I know. No, Arthur whispered. You don't. Not yet. He turned his eyes toward Maya. Ask her how many others. The room went still. Maya's breath caught. Reed looked sharply at her. That is irrelevant. Ryan turned to Maya. How many others? Maya felt every eye on her. She thought of the woman with numbness in her left arm who waited 4 hours. The retired mechanic asked about payment before pain. The teenager with the broken wrist. The men and women who sat in the waiting room pretending not to be ashamed because they could not afford to be sick. She spoke carefully. I don't have numbers. I didn't ask for numbers, Ryan said. I asked how many. Maya looked at Reed. He stared back with a warning in his eyes. The kind of warning she had seen before. Be careful. Think about your future. Remember who signs the forms. For the first time that night, it did not work. Too many, Maya said. Tanya's voice came from the doorway. She's right. Dr. Harris folded her arms. She is. Reed's composure cracked. This is becoming an employee grievance session. No, Dr. Harris said. It is becoming a pattern. Ryan looked at Sergeant Miles. Expand the scope. I want prior complaints, transfer records, delayed care reports, and security removal logs from the last year. We start with tonight, but we don't stop there. Reed stepped forward. You do not have authority to audit this hospital. Ryan met his eyes. Maybe not alone. As if the sentence had summoned them, footsteps approached from the hallway. A woman in a navy suit entered with 2 uniformed officers behind her. She was in her late 50s, composed, silver hair cut neatly at her jaw, carrying the kind of presence that made people straighten without knowing why. Commander Bennett, she said. Ryan turned. Deputy Chief Wallace. Reed's face changed again. The woman looked at him. Mr. Reed, I am Deputy Chief Marlene Wallace with Atlanta Police Department. City Legal has been notified. Given the circumstances, we are preserving all relevant evidence pending review. Reed tried to recover. Deputy Chief, surely there has been some overreaction. Wallace looked past him toward Arthur. Then at Maya. A retired general collapsed in your lobby. A nurse was fired for treating him. And half the waiting room is giving statements. I would call this many things. Overreaction is not one of them. Tanya murmured, Amen, under her breath. Wallace turned to Maya. You are Maya, William. Yes, ma'am. I understand you were escorted out after rendering aid. Yes, ma'am. Wallace studied her for a moment. Not coldly, but with a seriousness that asked for courage without saying so. At some point tonight, we'll need your full statement. Maya nodded. I'll give it, Reed said. She is a disgruntled former employee. Deputy Chief Wallace looked at him. Mr. Reed, every time you speak, you make her more credible. For the first time all night, Tanya smiled openly. Dr. Harris ordered Arthur moved to cardiac observation, and this time no one dared mention insurance. As the transport team arrived, Maya stepped back, but Arthur reached for her again. Stay close, he whispered. I will. Ryan walked beside the bed as they moved Arthur into the hall. SWAT officers parted. Nurses watched. Patients in the waiting room fell silent as the old man passed through, no longer invisible. Not because he was a general, Maya thought, but because the truth around him had finally made people look. As Arthur disappeared toward the cardiac unit, Deputy Chief Wallace's officers moved toward administration. Sergeant Miles carried the secured footage. Reed stood in the hallway, his suit still perfect, his authority no longer so. Maya remained by the doorway of room 4, suddenly aware of how tired she was. Tanya came beside her and handed her a paper cup of coffee from the nurse's station. It's terrible, she said. Maya took it. I know. You want sugar? No. You sure? Maya looked at the cup, then at Reed being asked for his office access codes by a police officer. Actually, she said. Yes. Tanya nodded. That kind of night. Maya sipped the bad coffee and felt warmth move through her hands. The night had begun with a man no one wanted to save. Now it was becoming something larger, something that reached beyond one room, one cruel order, one stolen badge. Somewhere in the hospital, Arthur Bennett's heart was still fighting. And because it was, the truth had more time. The bad coffee tasted like burnt pennies and old decisions, but Maya drank it anyway. She stood beside Tanya at the nurse's station while the hospital rearranged itself around the truth. The same fluorescent lights still buzzed overhead. The same registration phones still blinked. The same waiting room chairs still held tired patients and worried families, but nothing felt the same. Riverside General had always carried an invisible order: administrators above doctors, doctors above nurses, insured patients above uninsured ones, polished shoes above broken shoes. Tonight, that order had been cracked open, and people were beginning to look through it. Deputy Chief Marlene Wallace's officers moved with quiet authority through the administrative hall. Sergeant Miles and the hospital technician disappeared into the surveillance room again to secure backups. 2 SWAT officers stood near the front entrance, not blocking care, but making it clear that no one important would slip into the rain unnoticed. Commander Ryan Bennett had gone upstairs with his father to cardiac observation, and Malcolm Reed had been left in the lobby with the expression of a man who had suddenly discovered that walls could listen. Dr. Victor Hale stood near the physician workstation, pretending to read a chart he had not turned a page on in several minutes. Tanya noticed Maya looking at him. Don't let him crawl back into your head. He's been there a while, Maya admitted. Tanya leaned one hip against the counter. Men like Hale rent space in people's heads because nobody charges them. Maya almost laughed. You always talk like this? Only after midnight, and only when someone deserves it. Across the station, an older respiratory therapist named Glenn slowly set down a plastic supply tray. He was in his early 60s, with a gray mustache and the permanent stoop of a man who had spent half his life leaning over bedsides. He had said little all night, but now he looked toward Maya and cleared his throat. I saw something last spring, he said. Tanya turned. Glenn? He rubbed the back of his neck. Man came in from a bus stop. COPD flare-up. Couldn't breathe worth a damn. No insurance card. They made him wait almost 2 hours while beds sat open. Maya remembered. She had not been assigned to that patient, but she remembered the man's cough rattling across the waiting room. Glenn looked toward Dr. Hale. He ended up in ICU by morning. Hale snapped the chart shut. That is enough. No, Deputy Chief Wallace said, stepping out from the administrative hallway. It is not. Hale stiffened. Deputy Chief, with respect, medical outcomes are complex. Staff gossip is not evidence. Wallace looked at Glenn. Sir, if you are willing, one of my officers will take your statement. Glenn swallowed, then nodded. I'm willing. That was the moment the dam began to give way. Not dramatically. Not with shouting. People who had worked in hospitals for years did not shout when the truth finally came. They spoke carefully, because they knew careers could be broken by a sentence. A registration clerk named Amy admitted that uninsured patients were routinely told to wait before triage if the director was on site. A security guard said he had been ordered more than once to move along people who looked homeless before nurses could assess them. An elderly volunteer in a pink cardigan whispered that she had seen families cry at the desk because they were asked about payment before anyone asked what hurt. Maya listened, and with each statement something heavy grew inside her. Relief. Yes, because she was not crazy, not oversensitive, not imagining the pattern, but grief too, because being right meant people had suffered. Tanya seemed to feel it as well. Her face lost some of its fire and settled into sorrow. We all knew pieces, she said quietly. Nobody had the whole picture. Maybe we didn't want the whole picture, Maya replied. Tanya looked at her. Maybe we were scared. Maya did not argue. Fear had been the quiet supervisor in that hospital long before Malcolm Reed walked into the lobby. Fear of losing insurance. Fear of losing hours. Fear of bad evaluations and frozen promotions, and the slow punishment of being scheduled for every holiday until you learned to stop questioning. Maya knew that fear intimately. She had carried it like a folded bill in her pocket. Always there. Always counted. Her phone buzzed again. Mama. I'm still awake. Maya stared at the message for a moment before stepping into a quieter corner near the vending machines. She called. Denise answered immediately. Baby, I'm okay. You said, safe. Safe and okay are not the same thing. Maya closed her eyes. Her mother's voice had a way of pulling the child out of her. The little girl with scraped knees and too many questions. I got fired. Silence. Then Denise said, for what? For saving a man they didn't want to treat. Another pause. This one was different. Heavier, but not surprised. Is he alive? Yes. Then we'll figure out the rest. Maya pressed a hand over her eyes. Mama, it's bigger than that. He's a retired general. His son is the SWAT commander. The police are here. They're investigating Reed and Dr. Hale. Denise exhaled slowly. Lord, I don't know what happens next. None of us ever do. That's why doing right has to be enough before the reward shows up. Maya's throat tightened. What if there is no reward? Then you still have to sleep with your own soul. Maya laughed softly through the ache. You should write greeting cards. I should be asleep. But my daughter is out here starting civil rights hearings in an emergency room. Mama, I'm proud of you. Those 4 words nearly took Maya's knees out from under her. She leaned against the wall beside the vending machine, listening to the faint hum of refrigeration and the distant murmur of officers taking statements. I was scared. Courage ain't the absence of scared, Denise said. It's telling scared to sit in the back seat while you drive. Maya wiped under one eye. I love you. I love you too. And Maya? Yes, ma'am. Eat something. Coffee is not dinner. Despite everything. Maya smiled. Yes, ma'am. When she returned to the nurse's station, Tanya handed her a wrapped peanut butter cracker pack without a word. Maya stared at it. Did my mother call you? No. I'm just old enough to know when somebody is running on fumes. Maya opened the crackers and ate one, even though her mouth felt too dry for food. At the far end of the lobby, Malcolm Reed was on his phone, speaking low and fast. Deputy Chief Wallace stood nearby, watching him like a hawk watching a field mouse. Reed's polished confidence was beginning to fray. His tie was loosened. His hair, perfect earlier, had one strand out of place near his temple. It was a small thing, but Maya noticed. Men like Reed believed appearances were armor. Tonight, even his armor was tired. Dr. Hale walked toward Maya. Tanya immediately straightened. Don't. Hale ignored her. He stopped a few feet from Maya. keeping his voice low enough that he could pretend later it was a private conversation. "You must be enjoying this." Maya looked at him. "No, don't lie. People like you wait years for a chance to play victim in public." Tanya moved, but Maya touched her arm. Maya faced Hale fully. "A man nearly died tonight because you hated what he looked like and hated that I challenged you. There is no enjoyment in that." His eyes narrowed. "You think this ends with applause? You think they give you a medal and everything changes? Hospitals have long memories. So do patients." For a second, something ugly flashed across his face. Then Deputy Chief Wallace's voice came from behind him. "Dr. Hale." He turned. Wallace held up a small recorder. "Since you have opinions you're comfortable sharing, let's put them somewhere official." Hale's mouth opened, then closed. Tanya whispered, "That's what I call bedside manner." Maya had to look away to keep from smiling. Before Hale could answer, the elevator at the end of the hallway opened. Commander Ryan Bennett stepped out. His face was controlled, but his eyes were darker than before. "Dr." Harris walked beside him, holding a chart. Maya's chest tightened. "Is General Bennett all right?" Ryan heard her and came straight over. "He's stable. Resting. He asked me to tell you he is following orders, temporarily." "That sounds like him," Maya said. Dr. Harris gave a tired smile. "His cardiac markers are concerning, but we caught it soon enough. Because of you." Maya accepted the words quietly this time. Maybe she was too tired to deflect them. Ryan looked toward the administrative hall, then back at Wallace. "What have we got?" Wallace's expression sharpened. "More than tonight. Staff statements suggest a pattern of delayed or denied preliminary care for uninsured and homeless patients. We're preserving records." Ryan nodded once. "Then we keep going." Reed, hearing this, stepped forward. "Commander, Deputy Chief, I strongly advise against broadening this into a fishing expedition." Ryan turned toward him. "My father asked one question upstairs." Reed said nothing. Ryan's voice was calm. "He asked how many others." The lobby fell quiet again. Maya felt the question move through the room like a bell. How many others had been left waiting? How many had been judged by shoes, coats, addresses, skin, accents, age, poverty? How many had no son with a badge, no title waiting to be discovered, no sirens coming down the street? Reed looked around and seemed to realize that everyone else was asking the same thing. Ryan stepped closer to him. "Until we know the answer, nobody here is finished." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shone across the wet pavement, red and blue still pulsing against the hospital windows. Maya stood with a cracker in one hand, coffee in the other, her job uncertain, her future cracked wide open, and understood that the night had become larger than her fear. What began with one old man on the floor was now turning into a reckoning. And for the first time since she put on scrubs that evening, Maya wondered if Riverside General might finally be forced to heal itself. The question hung over Riverside General like smoke after a fire. How many others? No one said it again for several minutes, but Maya could feel it moving from person to person. It was in the way the registration clerks avoided Malcolm Reed's eyes. It was in the way nurses who had once lowered their voices now stood a little straighter. It was in the way patients in the waiting room seemed to understand that the night's chaos was not an interruption of care, but maybe the beginning of accountability. Commander Ryan Bennett stood near the nurses' station with Deputy Chief Wallace, Sergeant Miles, and Dr. Harris. Maya remained a few feet away with Tanya, close enough to hear but not important enough, at least in her own mind, to belong in the circle of command. Ryan noticed that and looked at her. "Miss William, come here." Maya stepped closer. Reed immediately objected. "She is not an employee." "No," Ryan said. "She is the person who made sure the witness to tonight's misconduct survived." Reed's mouth tightened, but he did not answer. Deputy Chief Wallace opened a folder an officer had just handed her. "We have statements from 6 staff members and 4 patients so far. All consistent." The old man collapsed. Reed ordered removal. Hale interfered. Maya rendered aid. She was terminated after the patient stabilized. "Suspended pending termination," Dr. Harris corrected dryly. Wallace gave her a brief smile. "Noted," Sergeant Miles added. "The video confirms the major points." Reed lifted his chin. The video does not show medical necessity. It shows an emotional nurse escalating a situation. Maya felt the old familiar sting. But before she could answer, Dr. Harris did. "Malcolm, I have reviewed the vitals, the EKG, and the treatment timeline. Medical necessity is not in question." Hale, who had been standing near the physician workstation, pushed himself into the conversation. "Elaine, with all respect, you arrived after the initial decision. And yet I arrived before the patient died," Harris said, which appears to be the line Maya was trying to hold. Tanya murmured, "That line had better staffing than this hospital." Maya glanced at her, and Tanya raised her eyebrows as if to say, "What?" It's true. The moment might have broken some of the tension if an officer had not appeared from the administrative hallway with a laptop tucked under one arm and a troubled look on his face. "Deputy Chief," he said, "we need you in records." Wallace's expression changed. "What did you find?" The officer looked at Reed, then back at Wallace. "A removal log." Reed's face went still. Ryan saw it. So did Maya. Wallace closed her folder. "Show me." They moved down the hallway toward administrative records. Maya did not expect to be included, but Ryan glanced back. "Miss William, Dr. Harris, come with us." Reed stepped forward. "Absolutely not. Confidential patient records cannot be reviewed by unauthorized individuals." Wallace stopped and faced him. "Then walk with us and explain what we're looking at." That was the last thing Reed wanted, but refusing would have looked worse. He followed. The records room was down a short corridor behind billing, past a staff bulletin board covered with flu shot reminders, retirement party photos, and a faded flyer for a hospital chili cook-off. The ordinary details made the moment feel more unsettling. Maya had passed that board 100 times with coffee in her hand, never imagining that behind the locked door beyond it might be evidence of what poor patients had endured. Inside, the records room smelled of toner, paper, and dust warmed by old machines. A clerk named Susan sat at a computer, pale and frightened. She was in her 50s, with reading glasses hanging from a chain and a cardigan buttoned wrong in her nervousness. "I didn't know what it meant," Susan said before anyone asked. "I just entered what I was told to enter." Wallace's voice softened slightly. "No one is accusing you right now. Show us." Susan clicked through a hospital database. A spreadsheet opened. Rows of names, dates, times, notes, and disposition codes filled the screen. Maya leaned closer. "Security assist. Non-compliant. Removed from premises. Referred to county. No insurance documentation. Refused intake." Her stomach tightened. Dr. Harris whispered, "Dear God." Ryan's face hardened. "How far back does this go?" Susan's hands trembled on the mouse. "This file is 12 months. There are archived versions going back at least 3 years." Reed spoke quickly. "These are routine security entries. Hospitals manage disruptive individuals every day." Maya looked at the rows. Some names were listed as unknown. Some had ages: 68, 59, 74, 43. One note said, "Elderly female, confused, odor of urine, no ID." Another said, "Male veteran, agitated, claimed chest pain, no proof of coverage." Maya pointed before she could stop herself. "That man, Mr. Larkin." Everyone looked at her. She swallowed. "He came in last winter. Said his chest hurt. He had a VA card but couldn't find it. Security moved him outside after Hale said he was intoxicated." Dr. Harris leaned closer. "What happened to him?" Maya's voice lowered. "Ambulance brought him back 2 hours later. Full cardiac arrest. He didn't make it." The room went silent. Reed said, "That is an irresponsible connection to make." Ryan turned toward him. "Did it happen?" "I cannot comment on individual cases without review." Wallace looked at Susan. "Search Larkin." Susan typed. The file came up. Harold Larkin, 68. Initial removal, 8:14 p.m. Return by EMS, 10:31 p.m. Outcome, deceased. Maya looked away. For a moment, she was back in that winter hallway, hearing a nurse say the old man outside had stopped breathing near the bus stop. She had been new then, still learning which battles could be fought and which ones swallowed people whole. She had told herself she did not know enough. She had told herself someone else had made the call. She had told herself she would speak next time. Tonight had been next time. Tanya, standing behind Maya, placed a hand gently between her shoulder blades. Wallace's voice grew cold. "Mr. Reed, who authorized these removal guidelines?" Reed adjusted his cuff. "Again, you are misinterpreting administrative notes. These entries reflect safety concerns, not denial of care." Dr. Harris pointed at the screen. "Safety concern. Chest pain, no insurance. Safety concern. Shortness of breath, no ID. Safety concern. Elderly confused woman with Medicare pending. Malcolm, this is not security. This is sorting human worth by paperwork." Hale appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "That is a reckless accusation." Ryan looked at him. "You're in several notes." Hale stiffened. Susan clicked another filter, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Hale's name appears in 42 removal approvals." Tanya said, 42? Maya felt the number like a stone dropped into water. Hale stepped into the room. Every one of those would have had clinical reasoning. Wallace nodded to an officer. "Secure the database." Reed snapped. "You cannot do that." Wallace looked at him with hard patience. "We can preserve records relevant to an active investigation. Whether criminal charges follow is not your decision." For the first time, Dr. Hale looked not angry but afraid. His eyes flicked toward Reed, looking for leadership. Reed gave him none. Maya saw then how cowardice worked among powerful men. As long as they were protected by titles, they stood together. Once consequences entered the room, each man began calculating how much blame could be handed to the other. Ryan stepped back from the computer. "Deputy Chief, notify City Legal that this may involve systemic patient dumping." Reed's voice sharpened. "Careful, Commander." Ryan turned to him. "No. Careful is what everyone was while people got hurt." The words struck Maya because they were exactly true. Careful had kept jobs. Careful had preserved schedules. Careful had allowed cruel policies to hide beneath clean language. Careful had not saved Harold Larkin. Arthur Bennett had asked how many others. And now the answer was beginning to form in rows and dates and names. Susan wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Maya looked at her and saw not a villain, but a tired woman who had typed what men in offices told her to type because she needed health insurance and a paycheck too. "I know," Maya said softly. Ryan looked at Maya, hearing the forgiveness in her voice and perhaps the cost of it. "You don't have to carry this." Maya shook her head. "Nurses always carry what happens after someone says no." No one had an answer for that. A radio crackled from Ryan's vest. "Commander, General Bennett is asking for you. Cardiac unit says he's agitated." Ryan's face changed instantly. "I'm coming." Maya stepped forward. "I'll go too," Reed said. "She has no authorization to enter cardiac observation." Dr. Harris turned on him. "Malcolm, if you say one more word about her authorization while evidence of your administration's cruelty is glowing on that screen, I may forget my blood pressure." Steering. Even Wallace looked like she nearly smiled. Ryan and Maya hurried toward the elevators. Tanya followed, carrying a folded blanket she had grabbed from the warmer without explaining why. In the elevator, no one spoke for several seconds. The doors closed on the records room, on Reed's stiff posture, on Hale's frightened eyes, on the spreadsheet of names. Maya stared at the floor, numbers lighting upward. Ryan said quietly, "My father was right." Maya looked at him. "This can't only be about him." "No," Maya said. "It can't." The elevator opened onto cardiac observation. The hallway was quieter than the ER, softer, dimmed for patients who needed rest. But Arthur Bennett's room was bright, and an anxious nurse stood at the doorway. "He keeps asking whether Maya is safe," the nurse said. Maya's chest tightened. They entered together. Arthur lay propped against pillows, weaker than before but alert. His eyes found Maya first, then Ryan. "They'll try to make it disappear," Arthur rasped. Ryan came to his side. "They won't." Arthur looked at Maya. "Did you find them?" She did not pretend not to understand. "Some of them." His eyes closed briefly, grief passing over his face. "Names?" "Yes, sir." "Then remember this," Arthur said, voice thin but firm. "Justice doesn't begin when powerful people are embarrassed. It begins when forgotten people are named. Maya felt the words settle in her bones. Outside the room, the hospital continued its long night of reckoning. In the records room below, the names waited on a screen. In the lobby, witnesses waited with coffee growing cold in their hands. And in a cardiac bed under soft lights, the man they had tried to throw away had become the voice calling all the others back inside. Arthur Bennett's words stayed with Maya long after the monitor settled back into its steady rhythm. Justice doesn't begin when powerful people are embarrassed. It begins when forgotten people are named. She stood beside his bed in cardiac observation, watching the old general's chest rise and fall beneath the white blanket. His strength had carried him far enough to speak the truth, but his body was demanding payment now. His eyelids drooped. The lines around his mouth deepened. Whatever command still lived in him had not erased the fact that he was 75 years old and had nearly died on a hospital floor. Dr. Harris checked the monitor and lowered her voice. "General, I need you to rest now." Arthur's eyes opened halfway. Doctors always say that when they're tired of listening. I say it when my patient is stubborn enough to make his own heart work overtime. A faint smile moved across his face. My wife used to say the same thing. Then your wife was a wise woman. The wisest. His gaze shifted to Ryan. Listen to her. Ryan sat at the edge of the chair beside the bed, still wearing his tactical jacket, though the man in it no longer looked like a commander. He looked like a son trying not to show how close he had come to losing the first man he had ever admired. "I'm listening," Ryan said. Arthur looked toward Maya. "And you, don't disappear." Maya shook her head. "I won't." But inside, she was not sure what that meant. She no longer had a badge. Her employment status was a question mark being held in someone else's hand. Her mother was awake and praying across town. A list of names sat on a computer downstairs, each one a quiet accusation, and somewhere below them, Malcolm Reed and Dr. Victor Hale were probably trying to save themselves. A nurse from cardiac observation adjusted Arthur's the-4, and Dr. Harris motioned Ryan and Maya into the hallway. "He needs at least an hour without stress," Harris said. "We're in real rest. No statements, no visitors, no righteous speeches from retired generals." Ryan nodded. "Understood." Maya glanced back through the glass panel in the door. Arthur had closed his eyes. Without the fire in them, he looked fragile again. Ryan noticed her expression. "He's tougher than he looks." "I know." "No," Ryan said softly. "You knew before I did tonight." Maya did not know how to answer that, so she said nothing. The elevator ride back down was quiet. Ryan stood with his hands folded in front of him, the posture of a man containing a storm because other people needed him useful. Maya stood beside him, arms wrapped around herself. Her scrubs were still damp at one knee from kneeling in the lobby. The spot had dried cold against her skin. When the elevator doors opened, the emergency department felt louder than before. Not chaotic, exactly, but active in too many directions. Officers were taking statements in corners. Nurses were trying to keep regular care moving around the investigation. A child cried near triage. Someone laughed too loudly from nerves and then stopped. The smell of coffee had grown stronger, as if the whole hospital were trying to stay awake through shame. Deputy Chief Wallace met them near the nurses' station. "Commander, we have a problem." Ryan's face changed instantly. "What kind?" Reed's attorney arrived. So did 2 members of the hospital board. Maya looked toward the lobby. 2 men and 1 woman in expensive coats stood near the entrance, speaking with Reed. The woman was in her 60s, elegant and silver-haired, holding a leather folder against her chest. One man wore a navy overcoat over pajamas, as though he had been pulled out of bed and was determined to make that everyone else's problem. The third, Reed's attorney, had the smooth, alert face of someone who made a living turning facts into fog. Wallace continued. "They're pushing for this to be treated as an internal personnel matter and a misunderstanding regarding emergency intake." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Of course they are." Tanya appeared beside Maya with another coffee. "They brought the board in before sunrise. That tells you everything." Maya looked at the group. Reed saw her and immediately looked away. Dr. Hale stood a few feet behind them, trying to appear separate enough to survive. The attorney stepped forward. "Commander Bennett, I'm Charles Whitmore, counsel for Riverside General. I appreciate the emotional nature of tonight's events. But I must insist that armed personnel reduce their visible presence. This is a hospital, not a tactical scene. Ryan looked at him calmly. A patient was nearly denied life-saving care. Evidence is being preserved, and multiple staff members have reported a pattern of removals involving vulnerable patients. Whitmore smiled politely. Alleged pattern. Wallace cut in. Documented pattern. The boardwoman stepped forward. I'm Evelyn Price, chair of the Riverside Board. Commander, Deputy Chief. We are deeply concerned by what we're hearing, but we also have a responsibility to avoid panic and protect patient privacy. Maya had heard that kind of voice before. It was not cruel like Reed's or sharp like Hale's. It was soft, educated, careful. It carried sympathy without surrendering control. Ryan said, "Protecting privacy is not the same as protecting misconduct." Agreed, Evelyn said. If misconduct occurred, Tanya muttered. If, Evelyn's eyes moved to her. Nurse Brooks, is it? Yes, ma'am. I understand emotions are running high among staff. Tanya gave a small smile. My emotions have been running high since a man got told to die somewhere cheaper. The lobby went quiet around them. Whitmore's smile vanished. That kind of inflammatory language is unhelpful. Maya stepped forward before she planned to. No, sir. It's plain language. People here are tired of helpful language that hides harmful things. Evelyn studied her. You're Maya William. Yes, ma'am. The nurse at the center of this. Maya felt the old instinct to shrink from attention, then thought of Arthur asking her not to disappear. She stood straighter. I'm the nurse who treated Mr. Bennett when Director Reed ordered him removed. Reed snapped. That is not the full context. Maya looked at him. Then say the full context. Say he looked homeless. Say he had no insurance card. Say you decided his life was less urgent until you found out who his son was. Evelyn turned slowly toward Reed. Reed's face flushed. I made a difficult operational decision based on limited information. Dr. Harris, who had just come up behind Maya, said, You made a moral decision and called it operational. That stopped him. Whitmore raised a hand. Let's not turn this into a public spectacle. Ryan looked around the lobby, at the patients, nurses, officers, clerks, and security guards who had all become unwilling witnesses. It became public when she was fired in front of them. Evelyn's expression shifted at that. Fired publicly? Tanya said. Badge taken, guards called, escorted out through the lobby. The boardman in the navy coat looked at Reed. Malcolm? Reed stiffened. It was necessary to restore order. Maya felt something break open in her then. Not rage, not exactly, but a weary clarity. She had been ordered, insulted, threatened, fired, and escorted out. And still, Reed believed the worst thing that had happened was disorder. Order for whom? She asked. No one answered. Then an officer came from the records hallway carrying a printed stack of documents. Deputy Chief. We pulled the first batch of removal logs and cross-referenced names with outcomes that returned to this facility within 24 hours. Wallace took the papers. Her face darkened as she read. Ryan stepped closer. How many? The officer hesitated. In the first year? 23 returned by EMS after removal. 7 critical. 3 deceased. The words seemed to empty the air from the lobby. Maya closed her eyes. Harold Larkin had not been the only one. Evelyn Price's hand tightened around her folder. That can't be right. Wallace handed her the papers, then read it slowly. Whitmore said, We need to verify methodology before anyone draws conclusions. Dr. Harris turned on him. 3 people died. Methodology can wait its turn behind decency. For the first time, the attorney had no polished reply. Reed was pale now, but still fighting. Those deaths cannot be attributed to administrative removal without full medical review. Ryan's voice came low. My father could have been the 4th. Reed looked at him and said nothing. The elevator dinged behind them. Everyone turned. Arthur Bennett was not in it. Of course, he was resting upstairs, but a man in a dark suit stepped out with 2 uniformed officers beside him. He was middle-aged, black, with a neatly trimmed beard and a face Maya recognized from local news. Deputy Chief Wallace straightened. Chief Monroe, the Atlanta police chief, walked into the lobby with quiet force. He looked at Ryan first, then Wallace, then Maya, Then finally Reed and the hospital board. "I was briefed on the way over," Chief Monroe said. "This investigation is no longer informal preservation. We are opening a formal inquiry with city legal and the district attorney's office notified." Whitmore opened his mouth. "Chief, I strongly advise." Chief Monroe raised one hand. "Counselor, you may advise your clients. You will not advise me." The room stilled. Chief Monroe looked at Reed. "Mr. Reed, Dr. Hale, you will remain available for questioning. You will not access hospital records except under supervision. You will not contact staff regarding statements. If you attempt to alter, delete, or influence evidence, this becomes a different conversation." Hale swallowed. Reed's polished mask was almost gone. Maya stood near Tanya, holding coffee gone cold, feeling the weight of the names downstairs, the old man upstairs, and the mother across town praying for her. She had thought the night was about whether she would keep her job. Now she understood it was about whether a hospital could be forced to remember the people it had tried to forget. Chief Monroe turned to her. His voice softened. "Miss William, I understand you began care when others ordered you not to." Maya nodded. "Yes, sir." "Then I'll say this plainly. You did not create this crisis. You exposed it." For a second, Maya could not breathe. Across the lobby, Evelyn Price looked at the documents again. Her face had changed. She no longer looked like a woman managing reputational risk. She looked like someone realizing the fire was inside the walls. She turned to Reed. "Malcolm, what have you done?" Reed looked from her to Ryan, then to Wallace, then to the officers guarding the exits. For the first time all night, he seemed to understand that the building he controlled no longer belonged to his version of the story. And somewhere above them, Arthur Bennett's heart kept beating, steady enough for the truth to keep moving. Chief Monroe's words settled over the lobby with the weight of a verdict no court had yet spoken. "You did not create this crisis. You exposed it." Maya stood still, her cold coffee forgotten in her hand. For the first time since the old man collapsed at the entrance, she allowed herself to look around, not as a nurse searching for the next emergency, but as a woman standing inside the consequences of one decision. The waiting room chairs were still filled with people who had come for fevers, chest pain, broken bones, and fear. The registration desk still blinked with unanswered calls. The same old television still played silent news over the vending machines. Yet nothing was ordinary now. The truth had entered the building, and it was moving room by room. Evelyn Price, chair of the hospital board, stood with the printed removal logs in her hand. Her face had gone pale beneath her careful makeup. She turned a page, then another, as if the next one might make the previous ones less terrible. "3 deceased," she whispered. Chief Monroe looked at her. "That is the preliminary cross-reference." Reed found his voice. "Preliminary. That word matters." Evelyn looked at him then, slowly. "So do the dead, Malcolm." The silence that followed was sharp. Dr. Victor Hale stepped away from the physician workstation, trying once more to gather himself into authority. "We are standing in a lobby making judgments about complex medical situations based on incomplete information. I will not have my career destroyed by emotional interpretation." Tanya Brooks folded her arms. "You tried to stop oxygen from reaching an old man. I questioned inappropriate use of resources. You blocked the emergency kit with your body." Hale's eyes flashed. "Nurse Brooks, I advise you to stop speaking." Deputy Chief Wallace stepped between them before Tanya could answer. "Dr. Hale, that was not a request you should repeat." For a moment, Hale looked as if he might argue. Then he saw the officers behind her and closed his mouth. Maya felt no satisfaction. That surprised her. She had imagined, in some private corner of pain, that seeing men like Hale finally silenced would feel like justice. Instead, it felt like standing beside a wreck after the crash had already happened. The danger was over for the moment, but the damage was everywhere. Ryan Bennett approached Chief Monroe and spoke quietly with him. Maya caught only pieces: formal inquiry, district attorney, hospital records, patient abandonment, civil rights implications. Each phrase widened the circle of the night. Then Ryan turned back toward Maya. "My father is asking to come downstairs." Dr. Harris, who had been reading Arthur's latest vitals on a tablet, looked up immediately. "Absolutely not." Ryan sighed. "That was my answer too." "Good. Keep it." He said if you refused, I should tell you he has ignored superior officers with more medals. Dr. Harris did not blink. Tell him I have ignored men with worse attitudes. Despite herself, Maya smiled. Ryan's face softened for half a second, then grew serious again. He wants the board chair to hear him directly. Evelyn Price looked up. Me? Ryan nodded. He says the hospital should not hear about its soul secondhand. Evelyn's expression changed at that. Not defensiveness this time. Shame, maybe. Or fear of being called to account by a man she could not dismiss. Dr. Harris closed the tablet. He is not coming down. But if Mrs. Price goes upstairs, with one officer, no cameras, no argument, I will allow 5 minutes. Ryan looked at Evelyn. Will you come? Evelyn glanced at Reed. He gave her the smallest shake of his head. That was a mistake. Maya saw Evelyn notice it too. Something in the older woman's posture stiffened, not toward obedience, but away from it. Yes, Evelyn said. I'll come. Reed stepped forward. Evelyn, I strongly recommend we wait for counsel. She looked at him. You recommended many things, Malcolm. He stopped. Maya expected Ryan to go with them, but he looked at her. Miss William, would you come too? He'll rest easier. Maya hesitated. If Dr. Harris allows it. Dr. Harris gave a weary nod. At this point, I suspect he'll behave better with her present. Tanya leaned toward Maya. Go. I'll hold the fort. You always do. Somebody has to make sure the coffee stays terrible. Maya followed Ryan, Evelyn, Dr. Harris, and one officer into the elevator. No one spoke as the doors closed. Evelyn stared at the removal logs she still held. Her thumb rested on the line where Harold Larkin's name appeared. Maya noticed and felt the ache return. Evelyn said quietly, Did you know him? Maya looked at her. A little. He was kind. Scared. He kept apologizing for coughing. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. My father was a veteran. He apologized for needing help too. The elevator rose. Maya wondered how many people in polished boardrooms had forgotten that every line in a report once had a face. Maybe that was how harm survived. Not because everyone was evil, but because enough people learned to read suffering as data. Arthur Bennett was awake when they entered cardiac observation. He looked weaker under the softer lights, but his eyes were ready. Ryan went to his bedside first. 5 minutes, Dr. Harris said. Arthur looked at her. You drive a hard bargain. I'm the reason you get 5. He accepted that with a faint nod, then turned to Evelyn. Mrs. Price. She stepped forward. General Bennett. No need for the rank right now. I'm just the old man your hospital tried to send back into the rain. Evelyn flinched. Ryan looked down, but he did not intervene. Arthur continued. Breath, thin, but steady. I spent most of my life in systems. Military systems, government systems, chain of command, regulations, paperwork. I know why systems exist. Without them, good intentions become chaos. Evelyn nodded carefully. Yes, but when a system teaches decent people to step over a dying man because he looks poor, the system is not protecting order. It is protecting cowardice. Maya felt the words hit the room. Evelyn's eyes filled, though she held herself together. I didn't know. Arthur studied her. That may be true. But not knowing is not innocence when knowing was your duty. The older woman lowered her gaze to the papers in her hand. Arthur's hand moved weakly toward Maya. She stepped closer and let him take it. This nurse did not know my name, he said. She did not know my rank. She did not know my son commanded anyone. She saw a man whose body was failing and chose him over her paycheck. Your hospital punished her for that. Evelyn looked at Maya. I'm sorry. Maya did not answer immediately. Apologies were difficult things. Some were bridges. Some were bandages placed over wounds that needed surgery. Thank you, Maya said at last. But I'm not the only one owed one. Evelyn looked back at the logs. No, you're not. Arthur's voice softened. Then do not give us a statement written by lawyers. Evelyn nodded, tears now slipping freely. I will call an emergency board session. Tonight, Arthur said. She almost smiled through the tears. Tonight. And suspend Reed and Hale pending investigation. Evelyn looked toward Ryan, then Dr. Harris, then Maya. Yes. Ryan's posture shifted slightly as if one front in the battle had finally moved. Dr. Harris checked Arthur's monitor. That is 5 minutes. Arthur closed his eyes. Exhausted. Best 5 I've had all night. Evelyn stepped back. At the door, she turned to Maya. Miss William, I can't undo what happened in that lobby. No, ma'am, but I can start by saying this clearly. You should not have been fired. You should have been thanked. Maya's throat tightened. Thank you. Evelyn left with the officer, carrying the logs differently now. Not like a legal problem, like a burden. Ryan remained beside his father. Maya started to follow Dr. Harris out, but Arthur's hand tightened faintly around hers. One more thing, he whispered. Maya leaned closer. Yes, sir. When this is over, don't let them make you a symbol so they don't have to treat you like a person. The sentence nearly stole her breath. Arthur opened his eyes. They'll call you brave. They'll put you in front of cameras. Let them if it helps. But remember, you are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to ask for what you're owed. Maya blinked hard. I don't know what I'm owed. Yes, you do, he said. Respect. Safety. A place to do your work without begging cruel men for permission to be humane. Ryan looked at Maya then, and there was no command in his face. Only gratitude and a kind of sorrow. Dr. Harris gently touched Maya's shoulder. Come on, let him rest. This time Arthur let go. Downstairs, the lobby had shifted again. Evelyn Price stood in front of the board members, Reed, Hale, and Chief Monroe. Her voice carried clearly as the elevator doors opened. Effective immediately, Malcolm Reed and Dr. Victor Hale are suspended from all administrative and clinical authority pending investigation. Reed's face went white. Hale exploded. You cannot do this. Evelyn turned to him. I just did. Tanya, standing by the nurse's station, looked at Maya and raised her coffee cup in silent salute. Chief Monroe stepped forward. Mr. Reed, Dr. Hale, you will surrender your badges and hospital access cards. Reed looked toward the exits and saw SWAT officers still posted there. For one terrible, satisfying moment, the man who had taken Maya's badge understood what it felt like to have power removed in public. Maya did not smile. She simply watched, because justice, she was learning, did not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrived as an old woman's signature, a disabled access card placed on a desk, a door that no longer opened for the man who once controlled it. And somewhere upstairs, Arthur Bennett finally slept. 3 weeks later, Maya Williams stood in front of Riverside General Hospital under a clear Atlanta morning sky, wearing a navy dress her mother had insisted on ironing twice. You keep pulling at that sleeve, Denise said beside her. Maya lowered her hand. I'm not used to this. To sleeves? To people looking at me? Denise gave her the kind of look only mothers could give. Part love and part correction. Baby, people have been looking at you your whole life. Today they're just finally seeing you right. Maya smiled, but her nerves did not leave. In front of the hospital entrance, rows of folding chairs had been set up for staff, patients, city officials, and reporters. A temporary podium stood where Arthur Bennett had collapsed that night. The rain was gone now. The tile had been cleaned. The glass doors shone, but Maya could still see it all, as if it were happening again. The old man on the floor, Reed's cold voice, Hale blocking the emergency kit, Tanya rolling the oxygen tank forward, the first SWAT vehicle cutting through the dark. Riverside General had changed since then. Not completely, not magically, but visibly. Malcolm Reed was gone, facing criminal investigation along with Dr. Victor Hale. The hospital board had appointed an independent patient advocacy council, including community leaders, retired nurses, clergy, and 2 former patients. Security could no longer remove anyone from the emergency entrance without medical assessment. Every staff member now had a protected reporting line outside hospital administration. Posters near triage read, "Care begins before paperwork." Tanya said the posters were ugly but necessary. They should have asked me about the font, she had complained. Now Tanya stood near the front row in a bright purple jacket, waving at Maya with a proud grin. Dr. Harris sat beside her, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes but pleased in spite of herself. Ryan Bennett stood near the podium in dress uniform, speaking quietly with Chief Monroe. And beside them, thinner but upright, leaning on a cane, was retired Major General Arthur Bennett. Maya's breath caught when she saw him. He looked nothing like the man on the floor that night. His suit was dark, his shoes polished, his white hair neatly combed, but his eyes were the same, clear, watchful, kind in a way that had survived war, grief, age, and one hospital director's cruelty. Arthur saw Maya and lifted one hand. Denise leaned closer. That him? Yes, ma'am. He looks stubborn. He is. Good. Stubborn kept him alive long enough to meet you. The ceremony began with Evelyn Price. She looked older than she had that night, but also more honest. She did not hide behind polished language. She spoke of failure, of institutional blindness, of patients whose names had been reviewed and families now being contacted. She said Harold Larkin's name aloud, then several others. The crowd grew quiet, not from discomfort alone, but from respect. When Maya heard those names, she closed her eyes. Justice had not brought them back, but forgetting them would have buried them twice. Then Chief Monroe spoke. Then Dr. Harris. Then Tanya, who had promised she would keep it short and immediately did not. I have been a nurse long enough to know hospitals don't run on marble floors or mission statements, Tanya said into the microphone. They run on tired people doing the right thing at 3 in the morning. Maya William did the right thing when it cost her. That is not just courage, that is character. Maya looked down at her hands. Denise squeezed one of them. Don't you dare hide from your blessing. Finally, Ryan helped Arthur to the podium. The applause rose before he spoke. Arthur waited it out with mild irritation, as if praise were a traffic delay. When the crowd quieted, he adjusted the microphone. I was told to keep this brief, he said, by my doctor, my son, and a nurse who scares me more than both. Laughter moved through the crowd. Dr. Harris lifted an eyebrow. Arthur looked toward Maya. 3 weeks ago, I walked into this hospital looking like a man no one needed to notice. I was wet, poorly dressed, and very close to death. Some people saw a problem. Some saw paperwork. One woman saw a life. Maya's throat tightened. Arthur continued. Maya William did not ask my rank. She did not ask my income. She did not ask who would come if I called. She put her hand on my pulse and decided that was enough. He paused, breathing carefully. Many people saw a homeless man. Maya saw a human life. And that made all the difference. The applause came again, stronger this time. Maya stood only because Denise pulled her up. She walked to the podium, with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Arthur took her hand when she reached him. The city presented her with a humanitarian award. Riverside General formally restored her position and announced her appointment to the new Emergency Care Reform Committee. But when Maya stepped to the microphone, she did not look at the cameras first. She looked at her mother, then Tanya, then Dr. Harris, then Arthur. I'm grateful, Maya said, but I don't want this day to be only about me. Because what happened that night was never only about me. It was about every patient who has ever been made to feel ashamed for needing help. It was about every nurse who has been told to stay quiet when staying quiet felt wrong. It was about remembering that medicine is not supposed to ask whether a life is profitable before deciding whether it is precious. The crowd went still. Maya took a breath. I was scared that night. I'm still scared sometimes. But my mother taught me that courage is telling fear to sit in the back seat while you drive. Denise covered her mouth, eyes shining. Maya smiled gently. So we drive. We keep going. We speak up. We open the door. And when someone comes in broken, poor, proud, tired, or alone, we treat them like they matter before the world makes them prove it. When she stepped back, Arthur leaned close and whispered, That was a fine order, Nurse William. Maya laughed softly. Thank you, sir. Later, after the reporters left and the chairs were being folded, Maya stood near the entrance with Arthur. For a while, neither spoke. People passed through the doors behind them, patients and families entering with the ordinary fear of ordinary life. Arthur looked at the spot on the floor where he had fallen. Funny thing about doors, he said. They tell you what kind of people run a place. Maya nodded. Whether they open, or who they open for. The automatic doors slid apart as an elderly woman entered slowly with a cane. A young clerk immediately stood and asked, Ma'am, do you need help? Maya watched the woman being guided gently toward triage. Arthur smiled. That's a start. Yes, Maya said. It is. Her badge rested against her chest, not as proof that the hospital owned her, but as a reminder of what she had chosen to serve. Not power, not policy without mercy. People. Denise called from the sidewalk. Maya, you coming? Tanya says there's peach cobbler in the break room, and I do not trust her to save me a corner piece. Maya laughed. Coming, Mama. Arthur touched her arm lightly. One more thing. She turned back. Yes, sir? Don't ever let them make you smaller than what you did when no one was clapping. Maya held his gaze. I won't. She walked inside, through the same doors that had once closed behind her in humiliation. This time, they opened without resistance. This time, no one ordered her out. This time, when the next frightened patient looked up from a chair and searched the room for someone kind, Maya William was there, and she stepped forward. The lesson of this story is that human dignity should never depend on money, appearance, race, or status. Maya William reminds us that doing what is right may cost us something, but silence can cost someone else their life. True justice begins when ordinary people choose compassion over fear and refuse to let the powerless be ignored. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.